If you've gotten this far and you're thinking, okay, nobody I know's died recently, so I'm not grieving, I'll just press stop and move on to another episode, I'm going to encourage you to stick around. Because although the anguish we feel when someone we love dies is a primary cause of grief brain, it can also happen as a result of other types of losses, which are sometimes overlooked and not treated as seriously as they should be. Dealing with any kind of emotional loss can result in feeling symptoms of grief brain. Ever found yourself mid-sentence and totally gapped out on what you were saying? Maybe forgot a name you know just when you need it. Misplaced your keys for the 5th time this week, even though you could have sworn you always put them in exactly the same place. Missed a meeting just because you entirely forgot about it. Maybe you felt like if you lost your list of lists, or God forbid your phone calendar, you'd be totally screwed. I know, we've all been there occasionally. But while you're grieving a deep loss, that confusion, that forgetfulness, that utter fog can seriously impact your life and feel simply devastating. You even begin to have serious concerns thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I getting dementia? Am I going crazy? Let's start by making one thing clear. There is nothing wrong with you. These cognitive effects are unlikely to be due to impending dementia, and you are not going crazy. Grief brain is real. And today we're going to be talking about why you feel the way you do. We'll explore the neuroscience of grief brain, why your memory, focus, and emotional regulation are all fucked up, and how you can gently support your mind as it's healing. So let's dig into that. You know how life throws us curveballs? Nobody gets through this journey of life without a few storms. Welcome to Transformative Journeys. I'm your host, Joanna LaRue. Each week, I'll share my thoughts and insights and dig into strategies that can empower you to rediscover yourself, learn about transforming pain into power, building confidence to navigate life's challenges, and cultivating a life of meaning and joy. Join me on this journey of exploration and transformation. Welcome back to Transformative Journeys with Joanna, and I'm your host, Joanna, podcasting from my blanket fort of compassion, neuroscience, curiosity, and resilience. And today's episode isn't just for anyone who's grieving and struggling with inability to concentrate or make decisions, remembering where you put your phone or keys again, wondering why you're so tired and forgetful and feeling like you just might be losing your mind in the fog. It's also for anyone who's walking alongside to support someone who's grieving. We're going to talk about the neuroscience of grief so you understand what's happening. And we're also going to talk about some strategies to help you through it and hopefully soothe some of the anxiety around it. Because this isn't your imagination. It's frustrating. It can feel debilitating, but it's not permanent. First, let's talk about what grief brain is. Because the truth is that sometimes just having a name for what the hell is going on can be a bit comforting. Grief brain is the term for the cognitive difficulties like poor concentration, forgetfulness, and that mental fog that we experience as a result of the stress that comes with an emotional loss. Things like difficulty focusing or concentrating, feeling overwhelmed by the simplest tasks, or just not having the energy or mental bandwidth to do much of anything. Forgetfulness and problems with your memory, having a hard time making decisions or planning things, just feeling generally spaced out in a bubble or unable to think clearly, otherwise known as brain fog. Even physical symptoms like anxiety or racing heart. Grief isn't just emotional. It's physical. It's neurological. And it physiologically impacts your brain. All of these symptoms are a way in which our brain reacts to trauma. And not only are they very real, very common, and very normal, and although they can feel like they last a long, long time, with self-compassion, self-care, and patience, they will improve with time. When we're grieving, the vast majority of our brain power is working to process what happened, to try and somehow make sense of this new life that is so radically different from our life before the loss. This causes what's called cognitive overload to the parts of your brain that govern our stress response system. Grief triggers the release of neurochemicals similar to those in our fight or flight response, like cortisol and adrenaline. They specifically affect some areas of our brain like our limbic system, especially our amygdala, which is responsible for emotional processing and our fear response, and our hippocampus, which takes care of creating new memories and retrieving old ones when we need them, and our prefrontal cortex. That's the part that controls our focus, decision-making, problem-solving, and regulating our emotions. Grief basically hijacks that entire system, taking down our ability to think clearly, to concentrate, to make decisions, to remember things, all while sending our emotions into an uncontrollable tailspin. And that little teeny bit of brain power that's left, it's working overtime just trying to run the rest of the show. So if your brain feels like it's running on dial-up, shout out to those of you who remember what that's like. While trying to function in a high-speed Wi-Fi world, it's not your imagination. It's trying to process something that just can't be processed yet. And that takes energy, focus, and pretty much all of the cognitive resources that you have right now. All right, if you've gotten this far and you're thinking, okay, nobody I know's died recently, so I'm not grieving. I'll just press stop and move on to another episode. I'm going to encourage you to stick around. Because although the anguish we feel when someone we love dies is a primary cause of grief brain, it can also happen as a result of other types of losses, which are sometimes overlooked and not treated as seriously as they should be. Events like loss of quality life after a significant injury, grieving who you used to be before an illness, a life-altering injury, or a major life change, losing a child through miscarriage or struggling with fertility, losing a relationship like an important friendship or due to divorce, infidelity, or breakup, when you become an empty nester, whether you were looking forward to it or not, an undesired estrangement or separation from a family member. This can happen, as a result of addiction or incarceration, losing a job or retiring from a job you loved, especially if you closely associated part of your identity with it, feeling like you've lost or are hiding part of your identity. And this is common in the LGBTQ community, dealing with the decline in health or personality for either yourself or for a loved one, the death of a pet, even relocating to a new city or leaving home. And this is not an exhaustive list by any means. Dealing with any kind of emotional loss can result in feeling symptoms of grief brain. But the more coping strategies we have, both for managing the symptoms while we're going through it and to help us recover from our loss, the better we can move forward over time. Let's put this into some personal context so you don't think I'm talking out of my you-know-what. After my son died, I thought I was going nuts. I was seriously concerned about my cognitive health. On top of the pain of my grief, I went from being a highly organized, extremely detail-oriented mother of 3 kids and an administrative assistant to someone who lost track of hours of time, couldn't read a paragraph in a book, let alone an entire email, and absorb what I'd just read. Half a dozen times a day, I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there. I would be driving somewhere I'd been 100 times or more and forget the route. I forgot birthdays. I had no idea what was wrong with me. I was scared. Another gift of the amygdala, by the way. I was confused. I was exhausted, both from lack of sleep and from trying to keep my life that had fallen apart at least functioning. And I felt that I was the only one this was happening to, and that nobody understood. I will admit 100% that my work back then was incredibly compassionate with me at this time. I don't know if my HR manager and my personal manager knew about grief brain or not, but they knew I was not functioning at work. I needed time to heal, and they encouraged me to take some additional time off work. Thank God they did that. My doctor, who was very kind, by the way, didn't tell me this was normal. The psychiatrist that the insurance company required me to see in order to qualify for some time off on paid leave didn't tell me this was normal. In fact, he told me that I needed to not make myself a victim. Charming fellow. The counselor I finally started seeing did tell me it was normal. But back then, we didn't have the neuroscience to explain why it happens, just the psychology to back that it does and that it's normal. And in the years since then, I've heard similar stories from dozens of people who are grieving spouses, parents, children, capabilities, relationships, pets, and even jobs, because we all experience it. I think some just maybe hide it better. Because when our brain is working doggedly to process loss, meaning, and emotional upheaval, it is forced to completely reorganize how it understands our world now. It's like there are 87 browser tabs open and we're trying to download what we need running on dial-up. Most of the time, it just freezes or kicks us out of the system. Error 101, insufficient memory available to perform this action. This usually begins to dissipate slowly over the first year or so, but we can often experience waves of it for years. For me, even almost 20 years later, it can sometimes start to kick in again around the anniversary of my son's death or even around his birthday. Long after people expect you to be back to normal, long after people have forgotten the significant date that still affects you deeply, long after even you might think you're past that stage of grief, which is why it's so important to acknowledge and understand that what we're going through is normal, and to give ourselves the compassion and grace to be realistic about our self-expectations when it's happening. If this conversation is helping you at all and you'd like a little extra help navigating or coping with grief, I want you to go to my website and grab a couple of my free resources. My Insights for Navigating Grief contains gentle insights and tips, and my Essential Grief Toolkit provides actionable things you can do to help you cope and feel less overwhelmed. Grab them at transformativejourneys.ca or just scroll down to the link in the show notes. So, what are some of the things we can do when we're struggling with that mental fog, cognitive overload, and the totally emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion of grief brain? Let's get into some ways to support your healing heart and your healing brain. First of all, prioritize rest. Struggling with insomnia is all too common when we're grieving. Our circadian rhythm and sleep quality are definitely impacted by grief, so we want to start to develop some simple routines, sometimes called sleep hygiene, that supports better sleep, because our brains and bodies actually do most of their healing during sleep. So create a wind down routine that includes turning off electronics an hour before bed. Have a simple, soothing personal hygiene routine. Try natural, not synthetic, lavender scent because it's well known for its calming effects on our nervous system. Maintaining a regular sleep schedule is really important. Going to bed at the same time every night, including weekends. And I totally get a fail grade on this right now. My husband works nights, so my weekend bedtime is much later than my weeknight bedtime. Making your bedroom a sleep haven is really important. It should be comfortable sleeping temperature, so not too warm, not too cold. It should be dark. You can try sound therapy or white noise. Even a fan will give you some white noise in your room. Moving the clock so you can't see it. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, try not to look at the clock, because checking the time can just make you feel more anxious about the sleep you're not getting and make it harder to fall back asleep. Only use your bed for sleep and other sleep-inducing activities. Yeah, like sex. Try not to take naps. Daytime naps can really disrupt your nighttime sleep cycle and make it even worse. I haven't tried this, but some people swear by increasing their serotonin with a mixture of warm milk, a teaspoon of real vanilla, not the imitation stuff, and a few drops of stevia. Timing your stimulants that's also super important. Caffeinated beverages, chocolate, alcohol. Remember that although alcohol can initially make you feel sleepy, it actually interrupts our sleep. And although we hear this all the time, I'm going to throw in regular exercise because we all know that it's beneficial for our overall health. But don't do vigorous exercise within 4 hours of your bedtime, because that actually can energize you and keep you from falling asleep easily. Next, use some memory aids. There's no shame in relying on your list of lists or your phone calendar and reminders to help you stay organized. Simplify any to-do list by breaking them down into smaller, manageable steps. Writing things down by hand also has positive effects on learning and memory. Actually, a recent study in Frontiers in Psychology monitored brain activity in students taking notes, and they found that the ones writing by hand had higher levels of electrical activity across a wide range of interconnected brain regions responsible for movement, vision, sensory processing, and memory. Typing, however, led to minimal, if any, activity in those areas of their brains. Lean into routines, even small ones. When our inner world feels like chaos in the middle of a tornado, when you're standing in a hurricane, and let's face it, when you're grieving, your outer world feels like that too. Having small rituals where there's a little bit of structure creates neural predictability, which our brains really like, that can help reduce feelings of overwhelm and just help us feel a little bit less scattered, at least for a while. So think your morning tea, your same breakfast every morning, feeding your pet, your evening walk. Even 5-minute rituals can calm your nervous system and give it a little bit of the stability that it craves. Practice a few minutes of mindfulness, even imperfectly, or meditation if that's your jam. Mindfulness is well known to help calm down our amygdala activity and help to reactivate our prefrontal cortex, which not only calms down our stress response, but also improves emotional regulation, attention, and memory. So simple activities like deep breathing or a 3-2-1 grounding activity can help anchor us back into the present moment and tame that cognitive overload a bit. And the 3-2-1 grounding activity is super quick and simple, but it's also really powerful and like easy peasy. Name 3 things you can see, name 2 things you can feel as in touch, and name 1 thing you can hear. And even a 10-minute walk in nature has been shown to reduce stress and calm our brain. And of course, that incorporates a little bit of physical activity, which is also healthy for our body, mind, and spirit, because it can help regulate hormones and also improve your mood. Another big one is go ahead and confront your feelings by writing them out. Your feelings and emotions deserve to be validated, and neuroscience has shown that naming emotions calms our limbic system and helps our prefrontal cortex kick back in and re-engage. Journaling is an excellent way to try to articulate your feelings in private. And for this kind of journaling, I always recommend setting a timer for maybe 20 to 30 minutes at most each time. Writing whatever comes to the surface during that period. This helps prevent that timing, like setting a timer, helps prevent your healthy journaling exploration of feelings into rumination, which isn't so healthy. You can also try writing a letter that you don't ever plan to send. You could write it to a person who's passed away, an ex that's jilted you, the boss who didn't appreciate you, your estranged loved one. Write whatever you need to say and whatever your feelings are out, and then burn it or bury it. This part can be highly therapeutic. Feed your brain. It's really important. Grief often does affect our appetite and can make us forget the simple things like drinking enough fluids. And I'm not talking about alcohol, which actually dehydrates you. Our brains need nutrients and hydration to repair itself. So it's critical that we ensure that we're supporting it for that. If you can't manage big meals, try to eat small, frequent, healthy snacks. Maybe consider supplementing with a multivitamin for a little while. Maybe adding some omega-3s, which help increase blood flow to the brain's frontal region and supports memory and cognition. And it can actually has been shown to improve the transmission of serotonin and dopamine. Lean on connection. Whether that's actually talking about it with someone you trust or a professional, spending quiet time with someone safe who understands that maybe you're not ready to talk, or reaching out to a support group. Social support lowers cortisol, And it causes our brain to release oxytocin and dopamine. And those are calming neurochemicals involved in emotional safety. The important thing is that this time doesn't have to involve deep conversations, talking about your feelings, or talking at all. Just being with someone, whether that's sharing a meal, quietly watching a show together, just being in the same room can tell your brain that you're not alone and that it can relax and exhale for a little while. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, be compassionate with yourself. Recognize and acknowledge that grief is a process. All of these symptoms are a normal, if difficult, part of that process. Your brain's not going to feel this foggy and disoriented forever. Grief reroutes our neural pathways, and it takes a while for it to rewire itself to make sense of this new world that we've been forced to learn how to live in. But neuroplasticity means that our brains can heal. It can rewire those neural networks again, and slowly your focus and memory, your mental clarity, and your ability to feel joy is going to return. And you know what? Just by listening to this today, you're taking one small but powerful step towards healing. So if you have a notebook or paper handy, here are a few gentle reflection prompts for you to explore in your journal or on your next walk. Be especially compassionate with yourself, but ask, what's one thing I can comfortably see myself doing to help me support myself right now? What would I say to someone I care about who was feeling this way? Or if you're that friend who's supporting someone, what's one thing I can do to help my person when they're struggling with grief brain? We're heading towards a difficult time of year for many. So over the next few weeks or so, I'm going to be focusing on more content that I hope will help you a bit with navigating both your grief journey and with the additional challenges we can sometimes be coping with during the holiday season. I'll share my thoughts on navigating grief in the modern world, dealing with those holiday firsts, supporting someone who is grieving, and creating meaningful rituals when the old ones just no longer fit with our new normal. If you know someone who might be struggling at this time of year, please go ahead and share my link with them. And don't forget, if you want a little extra help navigating or coping with grief, you can grab my free resources, the Insights for Navigating Grief and the Essential Grief Toolbox at transformativejourneys.ca, or just scroll down. I'll put a link in the show notes. As we wrap up, I want you to remember, grief brain is not a weakness. It's your brain doing the incredibly hard work of trying to make sense of your changed world. It's learning to hold space for your loss while letting go of the life you thought that you were going to have. You are not losing your mind. You're learning how to acclimate to your new circumstances. All it needs is what you need: compassion, gentle structure, and some time to work through the hard stuff. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Come say hi to me on Instagram at transformativejourneys.joanna, or visit my website and say hi there. If you've got an idea you'd like to hear me talk about, leave me a message and you might just see it in a future episode. And lastly, you know that hitting that subscribe button, tapping the bell or like or whatever it is that you have on your platform helps my show get noticed and discovered, right? So I will make you a deal. You tap it and I will keep dropping the best of what's in my heart and soul so we can keep learning on this journey together. Until next time, this is Joanna reminding you that it doesn't matter if you fall. What matters is how well you bounce. This is Transformative Journeys. See you next time. Your support helps me keep creating free tools and honest conversations because, let's be real, even when you love what you're doing, sometimes it takes a whole lot of metaphorical duct tape to hold it all together. If you'd like to toss a little bit of love into the duct tape fund, you can now support the podcast at buymeacoffee.com. I will put a link in the show notes. Just wanted to throw in a disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not replace the advice of a medical or mental health expert. I'm not a licensed counselor or a therapist, just a human with a mic and a story of growth and resilience. No degree, no fancy letters after my name. I'm a full-time student at the School of Hard Knocks, University of Life, where I figure I'll graduate when I take my last breath. In other words, I'm just Joanna, a fellow human being on my journey through this thing called life, and your concierge on this transformative journey.